Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. So, and now for, some parents, 'cause, there are some parents that are already making arrangements for somebody that will take care of their children. Should in case where we have mixed families, one parent is documented and the other parent is not documented. And so they're making arrangements especially if they go to schools, for who will take care of, their children, should in case, that parent is deported. Do you think that's a legitimate concern? What would you advise such a parent, to ease their fears?
So again, like I always say, and I try to be very clear. If people have these concerns, they should try to look for legal consultation or a lawyer or an organization that can support them with a Know Your Rights training, someone to be in contact with, right? So that you can address these particular concerns, because every person's situation is different.
That's right.
But I think people should know that this is something we're very mindful of. I work very closely with our school system. I have a really good relationship with our school's chancellor, and she's very concerned about immigrant communities and immigrant children. And we have a lot of conversations about what can we do to support families? What can we do to support principals and educators? The big school system, over 1,500 schools. We have the largest student body population in the country. A lot of immigrant children, a lot of immigrant families in our system. So this is a top concern for us.
That's right.
We also work closely with our administration of children's services, ACS. And we work closely with them because they are the agency that is there to care for children, and be able to plan for if children are at some point left on their own, or they don't have a guardian, or they need to intervene to support the child and support the family. We work very closely together to make sure that we're thinking through what to do if that was the situation and how to support the families. Now, I know that there are many people concerned. So one thing that people can easily do is, discuss this with, if you feel okay with your school, about, ways that, the school can support you, to make sure your contact information is up to date, and, emergency contacts are up to date, and that the school knows who to reach out to if you cannot, pick up your child from school. These are basic things that any parent should be doing, regardless of whether you're an immigrant or not.
Yeah.
But this is, I know, especially concerning for immigrant communities. I've been meeting with consul generals, different countries, that also express the same thing, that many families have come to them asking, well, what do I do, right? In case I have to go back to my country, or, what are the arrangements? And every country is different.
That's right.
Especially if you have children that were born here, you need to make sure to plan for for that. But yes, I know this is very concerning. I don't want to add fear and anxiety to people, because there are a lot of people who think this might happen tomorrow, this might happen at any point, and that people are getting rounded up, and one day I'm not going to come back home. You certainly should have a plan. You should have a consultation with an immigration lawyer that can make an assessment of your situation. But what we're seeing right now is that it's not massive raids or people getting picked up randomly in the street. Of course, if you think you're at high risk, you should try and consult and see someone about your particular situation. But I want to make sure that you know that this is something we are thinking a lot about, both in our school system and across our city agencies. Because ultimately, many of us deeply care about our immigrant communities, and we want to be there to support if there were any time that we need to in this situation.
Glad to hear that. That sounds really great. And so before we round up, Commissioner, because you had mentioned with regards to the public charge, right, and which allows immigration officers to assess whether an applicant is likely to become a public liability, or, government rely primarily on government assistance. And you mentioned earlier on that, if you're sick, you feel you need to go to the hospital, go to the hospital. You need to, if you, of course, you have kids who want to go to school, go to school. Now, being that if you are a green card holder and you go to an emergency, or maybe you access New York City care because you are sick and you're being treated, you don't have insurance and you can't afford to pay for it, is that considered a public charge?
So this is a very important question, and the way that I've been addressing questions like this, because there's a lot of speculation about what may happen next and all the changes people are hearing. I have a whole team in my office that whenever there's a change, they analyze and they really think through what are the impacts and how do we then communicate the changes to the community. Now we have to do our work and our homework to make sure that we really understand the changes, that we really think through how do we communicate to the community so that we don't create more confusion and fear, but we clarify for people.
That's right.
In public charge is one of those areas where there's a lot of confusion, misunderstanding about it.
That's right.
And what I want to say today about public charge is that as of right now, nothing has changed on the issue of public charge. If there were ever a change, my office would be looking very carefully at what those changes are, and we would communicate to our communities what those changes mean in terms of accessing city services.
Okay.
But I want to make sure that people know that it's important to, not speculate so much that you get confused and you confuse others, right?
That's right.
Public charge, the rules have not changed. The laws have not changed with respect to what you can access here in the city. So right now, if you're experiencing a medical emergency, or you have a chronic illness and you need to get your medication, or you just need to see a doctor, continue to go to the doctor. In fact, I speak to the president of the Health and Hospitals Corporation. I saw him today, Dr. Katz. He's a wonderful person. He cares deeply about our immigrant communities. And I talk to him often. And he wants to make sure that I let you know that you should continue to use our hospital system. Whether it's Elmhurst Hospital, Kings County, and the many other hospitals that we have available for our community members. Especially if you have a chronic illness. I know some people are afraid of getting their medication or going to see the doctor. In fact, the doctor told me that now they have virtual visits. So if people are really afraid and they don't want to go to the hospital, they can ask for a virtual visit, and you might be able to get one. But continue to do that. That I think is a very important aspect of all that's happening. But then there are many other city services that you can continue to access. But if there is a change in the public charge rules, you should know that you can go to us at my office in city government and get the information that you'll need. And this is important because there's so many changes, and there's almost a change every week or every day. That my office, I have a team of people that are subject matter experts that are analyzing and making sure they understand, so that we can brief deputy mayor, the mayor, other commissioners, and ultimately the community. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of speculation about possible, raids in the workplace, or, in houses of worship or in schools. I think it's important for us to, have a plan, talk with our family members, our loved ones, what happens in the case that this were to occur. But I think it's also important not to add fear and anxiety, because a lot of people are feeling the fear and anxiety, and the outcome of that could be that someone experiences an emergency and they don't want to call the doctor or call 911,
Or even have food and they don't want to seek food, go to the food pantries.
Go to the food. We've seen many people not wanting to go to the food pantry, and I meet on a regular basis with faith leaders, and I think faith leaders are going to have had a very important role in all this. I held an event with the Cardinal, Catholic Church here in New York City, Cardinal Dolan, where we partner with Catholic Charities to answer calls and answer these same questions that people had. And he and many other faith leaders know that it's important for them to communicate that we need to continue to, support our immigrant communities, but also uplift our values.
That's right. That's right.
And if I can't say this, whenever I work with faith leaders and people of faith, they often say, how would Jesus treat, the undocumented, right? Aren't they children of God as well, right?
That's right.
And that is an important message. And that's why I work closely with faith leaders. As a person of faith myself, I think that is important. And it's also important for people to have hope, right? And I think, I think that allows them to have hope for the future and put themselves in the hands of a higher power.
That is always very helpful. And thank you, Commissioner. And before, just on a final note, because there is this recent concern, not only relating to undocumented, but also green card holders. There is wide speculation so that ICE apprehending even green card holders. And then there is this widespread warning that, don't travel if you're a green card holder nationally or internationally. Just try to, stay put, because you are likely to be at risk of being, picked and detained. How true is this?
So again,
is there a specific aspect that they are targeting with the green card holders?
I think that I've heard this question asked a lot in recent weeks, in part because of what people are seeing on television and the coverage. And it's a valid concern, that people have, because people are, if you're a legal permanent resident and you're used to traveling without any concerns, and what they're seeing in the news indicates to them that things have changed, right? And I know that many people are now being extra careful with traveling, but ultimately, and this is important to say, it all really depends on your circumstances, on your
travel documents,
your background, like whether you've been part of whether you've been part of the criminal or have interacted with the criminal justice system.
Things
like this.
Yeah, these are people that have no criminal record, pending criminal cases. So that was why it was a bit shaky, like what is going on, right?
Let me say that again. If you think there are things that might trigger, right, something that might lead to you not being allowed back into the country, right, or your legal permanent residence revoked, then it's important for you to consult with an immigration attorney, a legal expert, to advise you before you choose to travel and before you choose to do anything, really, because these are the individuals that are highest risk, and you need to know your risk and what may happen if you choose to travel, or even simply like, when you choose to renew your legal permanent residency. If you don't have a record or anything that might raise concerns, and you still fear the anxiety, it's best to check in with someone, that can give you a consultation. You can call our immigration legal hotline. You can go to one of the nonprofit organizations we contract with to get that additional support. But let me just say that things are changing, and they're changing by the day, by the week. Like I said, I have a whole team making this assessment. And it's hard to give advice, general advice here because of things are quickly changing. But as I said now, and as I have said previously, it's always good to consult with someone about your particular situation because everyone's situation is different. And that's often how misinformation gets spread, Because your situation might have been one thing and you experience one thing, it doesn't mean that it's true for everyone, New York City invests in legal services more than any city in the country. So meaning that my office and other offices pay nonprofit organizations to support our communities because we know how important this is. So if you go to our website, you'll find a list of these organizations. And our hotline is also available. Now everyone wants a legal consultation now, so they're swamped. There's a lot of demand for it. But you should continue to ask, and call and seek that advice because that's the best kind of advice you're going to get. This is a moment to really use good judgment, and not go with the one thing you hear on social media. That's not the safest thing to do at this point.
Absolutely. Well, Commissioner, any concluding remarks?
Well, thank you for allowing me to share a few words with the community, and I think it's always important to communicate directly with our immigrant communities. People often see me at events, they see me on television, they see me everywhere. But I think I encourage the community members to look for trusted, reliable sources, to give for good advice, and not have so much fear and anxiety that paralyzes you, right? And that you stop using our hospitals, our school systems. Ultimately, the city of New York has been a city of immigrants for 400 years. We're celebrating 400 years this year. And in the past, immigrant communities have gone through similar, circumstances. In our history, unfortunately, there's been instances where immigrants have been under such circumstances, but the country and the city, we always overcome, right? And more people understand the value of immigrants to our city and to our country.
That's right.
We would not be one of, if not the greatest city in the world, if it were not for our immigrant communities. And we need to feel proud about that. We need to feel proud about our contributions as immigrants to our city and to the country, and about all our contributions. And my office is there because the city of New York wants to acknowledge these contributions and wants to be there in support. I wouldn't be there, my office wouldn't be there if that was not true. So I thank you to the community that is watching this and who will read these articles. And thank you, for your work to do this and to make sure that you're a reliable source, and to your team as well. I think you're all amongst the most important people to be doing this work right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We really appreciate that. Continue to do the good works you've been doing. Thank you so much. I know how busy you are, and taking your time, to come here today to clarify some misinformation really just show how much, you are for the community and you care for the immigrant community. And it is not the first time, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.